I personally live in Los Angeles. I want to be able to go to San Francisco for lunch. This will be possible within the next 15 years. In certain places, 10. I think there's a Hyperloop being installed in Dubai as we speak. 10 million new jobs. I think aquaculture is going to be important. And island living. Ever stop to think about how wonderful it would be to have these large islands that you could live on, particularly in retirement? All of a sudden you create a whole bunch of ocean living. It goes a little north when it's winter, when it's summer, travels a little south when it's winter. All of a sudden we have a much bigger world. Most of the ocean is uninhabited. Why be so clustered here in our major cities? Let's get bigger. Let's get expansive. Let's build all these new things. At least 6 million new jobs. And we'll be able to fix education. Right now, we should have every student hooked up with a laptop, with a personal tutor that they can access at will over the net, and they should learn projects. Everybody should know how to make a YouTube video, create a website, type at least 50 words a minute. We can fix this and we can make it happen for everybody. And entrepreneurship is actually going to be the key. And Korea has a lot of entrepreneurship going on, but it needs more. And so let's talk about what are the steps. Choose your team with care. When you start a company, the first 10 people that you hire are massively important because they tend to replicate themselves. And if you have a flaw in the seed crystal, it will replicate itself forever. And your company will fail, often just because of one toxic team member. Don't start with engineering. Start with marketing. Write a one-pager that says everything about the product or service that you want to do, and then you go get a customer. Your product doesn't need to exist yet. Desktop publishing, invention, is all you need to commit, and what it does is it creates a very understandable blueprint for what you want to do. The one-pager is powerful, and when people come to me and want me to invest in their company, I ask them, where's your one-pager? Well, let's talk about the technology. I said, no. Let me figure out how you're going to market it. Because if it's going to cost you too much to market it, then the business will fail. Creativity. How do you get some? You take a shower? I actually think that there's a bigger process than that. Listen to yourself and ask yourself, what irritates me? What do I not like? For me, I hate to stand in line. So whenever I find myself standing in a line, I say, that's a business opportunity. How do I get rid of this line? But more than that, I think everybody, particularly if you're young, you should go to weird trade shows. For many years, I went to every trade show. Whenever I'd go to Las Vegas, there were about 7 trade shows going on. I'd go to every one of them. I actually had a couple of business cards printed up that said that I was a member of the press, so I could get in for free. But even though they were not in my field, you learn something. And a lot of times you can create businesses by creating links between what is known and best practices in one industry that this industry hasn't figured out. Trade shows are probably the most important thing a young person can do. And I tell people, how many trade shows have you gone in a year? If you're a college graduate and you haven't gone to at least 10 in a year, you're not serious about being an entrepreneur. This is really fun stuff. Crazy things happen at trade shows that only happen there because they're a snapshot of an industry. Efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. You also need a skill. I don't know which skill it is, but you need to be one of them. You either need to have some marketing skills, some technical skills, some financial skills, or management skills. Generally, good entrepreneurs who have a success, who've been an entrepreneur before, step a team, find a project, start locally. A lot of people say, I'm going to build a product that everybody would want. It's the wrong thing to do. If you design for everybody, you end up sort of designing for nobody. What you want to do is have a very targeted, small market that you can access easily. That's how you can get started. Remember, Facebook started just by focusing on Harvard. And they got it right. And then they went to Yale. So it started out as a college thing. It turned out to be brilliant. It wasn't the first social media. There was Friendster and I forget the name of the other one. But what it did, he entered the marketplace at the right time, at the right way, by not trying to go too big too fast. But you have to move quickly. You gotta move quickly and don't have the paralysis. There's this thing called the paralysis of perfection. You can always find problems with your own invention. And if you continue to put off getting into the market, you miss the feedback, the churn, the give and take that is really important. Refine and improve. My dad said, when you make a sale, it's not your mouth that is important, it's your ears. Listen, refine, fix. Plan for your exit. Now, if you want to raise venture capital, the number one thing they're thinking about is how do I get my money out? They think less about being a successful company than who can I sell this to or can I take it public? That's their exit. And figure out how to get rid of risk, because risk kills creativity. Whenever you can drop the risk profile, you increase the creativity. Weird trade shows, embrace the crazy, mash together two industries, edit, and do it now. I want to live here. I want to live here. I want to make the world a better place, and I want to live there. So I want you all to really hurry up and invent this future, because I want to live there. The empires of the mind, the future, are the empires of the mind. Winston Churchill. The future is ours to create. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bushnell. 네, 여러분 수고해 주신 분에게 다시 한번 뜨거운 박수 부탁드립니다. 네, 저희는 잠시 세팅 시간을 갖고요. 잠시 한 5분 정도 휴식 시간을 갖고 롱게비티 생명 연장 테크 첫 번째 세션을 바로 진행할 예정입니다. 다시 한번 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 잠시 무대가 세팅되는 시간을 갖고 다음 오늘 첫 번째 세션인 롱게비티 생명 연장 테크를 진행하도록 하겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, in a short while, we will begin our first session, Longevity Life Extension Technology. Thank you very much. 네, 저희는 무대가 준비되는 대로 곧바로 첫 번째 세션 생명 연장 테크 세션으로 들어가도록 하겠습니다. 다시 한번 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 글로벌 리더스 포럼 오늘의 첫 번째 세션인 생명 연장 테크 Longevity Life Extension Technology가 다음 곧바로 이어질 예정입니다. 무대가 세팅되는 대로 곧바로 이어서 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 기다리시는 동안 다시 한번 통역기에 대한 안내를 좀 드리겠습니다. 저희 포럼에서는 동시 통역이 제공됩니다. 그 자리에 올려진 통역기를 사용하실 때요, 한국어는 1번, 영어는 2번 채널이 오니 참고하시기 바랍니다. 또 원활한 행사의 진행을 위해 소지하고 계신 휴대전화는 진동 모드로 바꿔주시거나 꼭 전원을 꺼주시기 바랍니다. May I have your attention, please? Simultaneous interpretation is being provided during this conference. Channel 1 is for Korean and Channel 2 for English. To minimize interruptions, we ask you to kindly turn off your mobile phone and no recording devices are allowed to be used during this forum. Thank you for your cooperation. 네, 다시 한번 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 지금 무대 위에 세팅이 완료되는 대로 곧바로 오늘의 첫 번째 세션인 생명 연장 테크 세션으로 들어가도록 하겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, in a short while, we will begin the first session of the 4th Global Leaders Forum under the title Longevity Life Extension Technology. 네, 지금 세팅이 거의 다 완료가 된 것 같은데요. 복도에 계신 참석자 여러분들께서는 자리로 돌아와서 앉아주시기 바랍니다. 다시 한번 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 곧 이어서 오늘의 첫 번째 세션인 생명 연장 테크, 롱게비티 생명 연장 테크 세션을 시작할 예정입니다. 복도에 나가 계신 참석자 여러분들께서는 모두 입장을 하셔서 자리에 앉아주시기 바랍니다. May I have your attention, please? In a short while, we will begin our next session, Longevity Life Extension Technology. In a short while, we will begin our first session, Longevity Life Extension Technology. We cordially ask all of our guests to enter the hall and be seated. 네, 다시 한번 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 지금 무대 세팅이 거의 끝났습니다. 저희는 무대 세팅이 끝나는 대로 곧바로 바로 첫 번째 세션을 시작할 예정입니다. 참석자 여러분들께서는 다시 홀로 입장을 하셔서 자리에 앉아주시기 바랍니다. 네, 곧 이어서 곧바로 오늘의 첫 번째 세션은 롱게비티 생명 연장 테크 세션이 시작될 예정입니다. 참석자 여러분들께서는 다시 입장을 하셔서 자리에 앉아주시기 바랍니다. May I have your attention, please? In a short while, we will begin our first session of the 4th Global Leaders Forum. This session will be held under the title Longevity Life Extension Technology. We cordially ask all of our guests to enter the hall and be seated. 네, 곧바로 첫 번째 세션 롱게비티 생명 연장 테크 세션이 지금 곧바로 시작될 예정입니다. 참석자 여러분들은 다시 자리에 앉아주시면 감사하겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please? In a short while, we will begin our first session, Longevity Life Extension Technology. We cordially ask all of our guests to enter the hall and be seated. 네, 지금 곧바로 첫 번째 세션을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 그럼 지금부터 제4회 글로벌 리더스 포럼의 첫 번째 세션, 롱게비티 생명 연장 테크를 시작하겠습니다. We will now begin our first session of the 4th Global Leaders Forum under the title Longevity Life Extension Technology. 네, 오늘 세션에서는 졸탄 이스트반 미국 트랜스 휴머니스트당 창당인이 좌장으로 수고해 주시겠습니다. In this session, Zoltan Istvan, founder of Transhumanist Party, will moderate this session. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Zoltan Istvan with a warm round of applause. 네, 모두 뜨거운 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
Hello, everyone, and how wonderful it is to be in Korea. I'm immensely enjoying myself. Well, we have an amazing panel today, as well as some speeches. So let's just get right into some of the introductions. And first, as she's already introduced me a little bit, my name is Zoltan Istvan. I'm a transhumanist, somebody who wants to use science and technology to radically modify the human being. But perhaps my single largest priority is trying to overcome death with science. And I think most of the members on our panel today are in that exact same boat. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start introducing them. We have Bill Andrews. He is of Sierra Science, the founder and the CEO there, and he's been involved in the biotech industry for about 30 years, an award-winning scientist, and his specialty is concentrating on telomerase, which essentially deals with how cells age. Next, we have Alex Zavarakanikov, who is the founder of In Silico Medicine, and his specialty is focusing on artificial intelligence and how to use it to enable people to learn more about longevity science. It's actually quite complex stuff, but one of his specialties is AI. He's also an award-winning author and has done some, I think, wrote about 50 papers in science and has a PhD. Next, we have Max Moore, who is the CEO of Alcor. And if you don't know cryonics, it's going to be fascinating. I'm sure Max is going to talk a bit about that. But he's also a philosopher and one of the fathers of transhumanism. And about 30 years ago, really started pushing for it. And last, we have Jae-sung Lim, who is a stem cell expert. And he has done he has a PhD dealing with stem cells and also did about 6 years of work at Oxford University. And he's here from Korea. And I look forward to this discussion on this panel. And we're going to start off with three 20-minute speeches. And first, we're going to start off with Bill Andrews.
Let's see, do I get the slides going? Okay. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. An incredible lineup of speakers, of people that have not only improved the world for all of us in the past, but also in the future. So it's a real honor to be here. I'm the president of Sierra Sciences, a basic research company looking at solving the aging process. And I'm also the chairman of the Institute of Advanced Telomere Medicine in Tokyo, which, as you'll learn, is actually one of the most important places, second to South Korea, in terms of trying to solve the aging process. Thank you. And let's slide didn't advance. Somebody want to make this work? It's already on. It's not working. Okay, so my slides aren't advancing. So I was hoping the clock would stop ticking.
Okay, works right.
Okay. So what I'm going to be talking about today is first a clock that ticks inside every dividing cell of our body that appears to actually play a role in controlling the aging process. And it ticks even if you have the healthiest lifestyle, eat the right foods, exercise all the time, and do everything your doctors tell you to do. This clock, if you have the perfect genetics and lead the perfect lifestyle, this clock that ticks inside all of us still limits our lifespan to a maximum of 125 years. So I'll be talking about that clock today. And I'll also be talking about, now it's going backward. Okay, so I'll also be talking about how research that we are doing to reverse this clock that's affecting both aging and our declining health. So I want to make it clear, we're not just talking about aging, we're also talking about making us healthier and reverse declining health. So now, a lot of us believe that aging is something that we all do gracefully. But that's not true. There's a lot of us living in assisted living homes and hospices because we can no longer take care of ourselves. And these people are miserable, they're unhappy, they're depressed. And this problem is going to get a lot worse because the world is faced with something called the silver tsunami. And the countries that are going to be hit hardest by this are Japan, South Korea, and China. And what this is that by 2030, the year 2030, 30% of the population is going to be over 65. And then by 2050, 40% of the population of Japan, and South Korea is going to be very close to this, 40% of the population will be over 65 years old. And what makes this even worse is that for every person that will be over 65, there will only be about one person in the workforce. So who's going to take care of these people? This is a big problem. Now you'll see that if you can see the small print, you'll see that South Korea is number 2 and China is number 3. But this is worldwide. It's just going to be hardest hit here. So the question is, who's going to take care of these people? And how is the government going to be able to afford all the expenses of taking care of these type of people? Well, I want to say one very exciting solution is what you'll be hearing later today when Ben Gertzel and Dave Hansen get up here and talk about robotics. Because I see this as a big, big opportunity to deal with care gain. We are going to have robots that take care of people. And that's going to be big business because there's going to be so many people that need taken care of. But another solution is let's not let these old people get old. Let's keep them young. Let's keep them healthy, alive, and still in the workforce so they can take care of themselves. So this is the solution that I'm working on trying to solve. So we have to first figure this out. What causes human aging? You've heard a lot of stuff. Some of it may be true, some of it's not. But a lot of people like to think that we are no different from old trucks sitting in a field. That is, we age because of exposure to the sun, the wind, the rain. But if that was true, why is it that people who live in the North and South Poles age at the same rate of people who live on the equator? And why is it that dogs and cats age at different rates from humans when they're in the same environment? I've always believed there had to be some kind of clock that ticks inside of all of us, and this clock is just set differently in dogs and cats and horses. Now another problem is, another thing that we're different from old trucks sitting in a field is, yes, we do get exposed to the weather. When we get sunburned, our cells die, but we have other cells that can divide to replace those cells. Trucks don't. So why do we age if we can have this ability to just constantly repair ourselves? Well, it's been known for a long time that when you take human cells and grow them in a petri dish or even on a person, oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, so my slides are advancing on their own. We find that cells can replace themselves, and whenever a cell divides to become two daughter cells, those daughter cells are identical. So again, why do we age? Well, it was discovered in the 1960s that our cells can't divide indefinitely. This is crazy. They can't divide indefinitely. For some reason, I'm going to have to keep doing this. For some reason, as our cells divide, they lose something. They keep track of their time. This was discovered in 1960s by Leonard Hayflick. It's called the Hayflick limit. And what Leonard found out was that when you take cells from a 10-year-old and divide them in a petri dish, those cells can divide about 90 times before they stop dividing and level off. When you take cells from a 90-year-old, you find that those cells can only divide 10 times before leveling off. So what's going on here? Somehow our cells know how old they are. There's some counting mechanism that's occurring in our cells, so our cells know how many times they have divided and how many times they have remaining to divide. And I've often thought of this as it's something like ride tickets at an amusement park. You go to the amusement park, you get a bunch of tickets, you know how many rides you get to ride, and after you used up half the tickets, you know you only got half those rides left, and you know you've already ridden on half those rides. So we must have something inside ourselves like ride tickets at an amusement park. And now we know that these ride tickets are found at the very tips of our chromosomes, and they're called telomeres. These things get shorter as our cells divide and we age. Okay, so let's discuss this in a little more detail. Telomeres, I'm proposing, is the clock of aging. And to understand what a telomere is, we need to first zoom in on a human being. And we find that a human is made up of 100 trillion cells. I'd mentioned cells before when I talked about sunburns. We kill these cells and they have to be replaced. They can divide to replace other cells. We're made up of 100 trillion cells. Now, if we zoom in even further, we find that every cell contains a nucleus. And inside these nuclei are found chromosomes. They're where our genes are. They give us our hair color, our eye color. They affect a lot about us. And remember, we're looking to find out what a telomere is. We've got to zoom in even further. And we look at one chromosome here. We see that a chromosome is made up of two arms, a top arm and a bottom arm. And inside of those arms are found the DNA molecule that gives us where our genes are found. This is a long string of beads. The beads are called bases, and a typical chromosome is about 100 million bases in length. What we are talking about now is the very tips of these chromosomes called the telomeres. Think of that long DNA molecule as a shoelace, and the caps on your shoelaces are the same as the telomeres on your chromosomes. And we know that when the caps on our shoelaces get worn away, our shoelaces start to fall apart, and the same thing happens with our chromosomes. So now telomere is about 15,000 bases in length, at least when we're first conceived. And here's where all the troubles begin. Every time our cells divide, and each and every time, our telomeres get a little bit shorter. There's so much cell division from the time we're a newborn embryo to a newborn baby that our telomeres have shortened from 15,000 bases down to 10,000 bases before we're even born. And the problem doesn't stop there. It gets worse. As we keep dividing cells, our telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter eventually. And when our telomeres get down to 5,000 bases, our cells lose the ability to function and we die of old age. This is not a theory anymore. This is a fact. Anybody growing human cells in petri dishes, normal human cells in petri dishes, know that this counting mechanism exists and the lives of those cells are limited by the length. Again, it's 15,000 when we're conceived, 10,000 when we're born, and 5,000 when we die of old age. And this limits our lifespan to 125 years, no matter how well you eat, no matter how much you exercise, no matter how much you do everything your doctors tell you to do. Okay, so it's not just aging, as I said. Telomeres are also the clock of declining health. Almost every disease you've ever heard of has now been connected to the length of your telomeres. And I want to and I could spend hours going over all these things, but I want to just focus on one example, and that's bed sores. When a person lies in a hospital bed for a long time, their skin gets worn away from the friction with the sheets. Well, that's okay at first because other cells divide to replace that and heal that wound. But after this happens over and over and over again, the telomeres get so short that you can no longer heal those wounds, and that's what causes bed sores. And so if we could find a way to keep the telomeres from shortening, bed sores wouldn't occur. Now you can think of this example in every kind of disease you've ever heard of where there's cell division involved. Now it's also not just us, our pets, dogs, cats, horses, sheep, pig, deer, they've all been shown to age by telomere shortening. So we could actually be benefiting their health too if we could find a way to keep the telomeres from shortening. But the absolute best example of where telomere length affects aging is that there are people on this planet born with short telomeres, and these kids suffer from a disease called progeria, the disease of short telomeres. They have a life expectancy of about 20 years, and they die of all the same age-related ailments that we do. If we could find a way to prevent the telomere shortening, this could be a cure for this disease. And there's only 250 kids at any one time on this planet with this disease, but that would still be a very worthwhile thing to do. Okay, so this is what we're doing. How do we stop and reverse this clock? Well, it turns out we have cells in our body that already have figured that out. That's our reproductive cells. And this is important because if our reproductive cells had telomere shortening, our kids would be born with shorter chromosomes than we have. And their kids would be born with shorter chromosomes than they have. And we would have been extinct as a species a long time ago. Well, so our reproductive cells has figured out a way to prevent the telomere shortening, and they do that with an enzyme called telomerase, which I led the research and the discovery of back in the mid-1990s. This enzyme actually adds bases. Remember I was talking about bases. Adds bases back onto the end of the chromosome. So every time a cell divides, the clock ticks once, and again it ticks again. But in our reproductive cells, when the clock ticks, telomerase pushes it back a tick. So that's what this enzyme does, and that's what I'm focused on, trying to use this enzyme. So it's only in our reproductive cells. How do we get this produced in all of our cells? Well, my company is my company is in Sierra Sciences. It's in Reno, Nevada. We're founded in 1999, and our mission is to lengthen telomeres in human cells to both reverse human aging and declining health. That's what we're doing. We have two different methods we're using. One is called telomerase gene delivery. We're going to deliver telomerase to all the cells of the body. And the other one's called telomerase gene induction, which I'll come back to. We already have a gene in our cells. We can induce that gene to start producing telomerase. This is our pictures of our lab. We have 10,000 square feet of lab space totally devoted to just solving these problems, how to get telomerase produced in all of our cells. The gene delivery involves essentially taking the gene for telomerase, encapsulating it inside of a protein, and then like a virus, kind of, it is then injected into a person, and this protein this gene encapsulated inside a protein will fuse with other cells and get inserted into the cells, just like two soap bubbles floating in the air will fuse and become one. This is one approach we're using. And remember what I told you about the Hayflick limit? Well, this is data that I'm going to show from our lab right now, that when we do this gene therapy technique on human cells, we abolish that Hayflick limit. So no longer do we get these cells leveling off at the Hayflick limit when we produce telomerase and keep telomeres long. Not only have we done that, but we've also reversed aging in human cells. We've reversed aging in human tissue, mostly skin grown on the back of a mouse. And colleagues at Harvard have now, using our technology, have reversed aging in mice. They've turned old mice into young mice. This lengthening of telomeres reversed aging in every way imaginable. It didn't just get more energy. Every way you can imagine about reversing aging, they saw in these mice and in these tissues in the cells. Nothing else, no matter what you've ever heard about aging, nothing else has succeeded at doing this. Only lengthening telomeres. And we have human clinical studies coming up really soon using this telomerase gene therapy on humans. Now, as I said, we already have the gene inside of our cells, so we don't necessarily have to deliver it to our cells. We have this gene producing telomerase. At least it produces it in our reproductive cells. This is the DNA shown as a gray bar. The blue thing is the gene producing telomerase. Next to the gene is a regulatory element, like a light switch that turns the gene on and off. Now, that's true in our reproductive cells. In all of the other cells of our body, there's a protein that's binding to this regulatory element and shutting it off. This protein's called a repressor. So what we are doing at my company is we are testing chemicals and natural products and looking for anything that will bind to that repressor, dislodge it, and allow the gene to turn back on again. This is pictures of high-throughput robots where we can test up to 4,000 different chemicals or natural products a day. And sometimes this thing is running day and night. And so far in our primary screening, which means that we are screening random chemicals, we've tested over 250,000 different chemicals at random to see if they can turn on this gene. We have found 900 so far that do so. We've been able to break these into 39 different families, and that allowed us to actually start doing something called medicinal chemistry, which now, instead of screening random samples, we could take everything we learned from these families that we've already discovered and start designing new molecules. And we've designed over 200,000 different chemicals so far. And through those testing, we have been able to increase the potency of doing this threefold. But we are still not there yet. We are about 3 to 8-fold lower than it will take to actually stop the aging process, or at least stop the telomere shortening. And if we can go higher than that, then we start reversing telomere shortening. We think that we can have such a drug or natural product in less than a year from now if our research continues on the pace that it has been. And very soon, I don't know if you know this person, this is Betty White. She's really famous in the United States. Very soon, I hope to be able to see somebody like Betty White go back, who's 94 now, go back to being 24. The cure for aging is in our telomeres. This is something I strongly believe. We just have to get done with the research to show it. And to learn more, I want to recommend you read my book called Curing Aging, which has been translated into South Korean, also translated into Japanese, and also Spanish and a few other countries. It's available in many different sources. There's also a movie about my research called The Immortalist. It also stars Aubrey de Grey, another anti-aging scientist. And this is a good way to learn about what's going on there too. So thank you very much. I guess we don't do questions until later. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. It's a great honor for me to speak to you today because we are the Global Leaders Forum, and as a matter of fact, here you are the global leaders because Korea is now leading the way in science and technology, in almost every area of human development. So for me, it's a great honor to be here. 감사합니다. So our company is on the verge of converging artificial intelligence with bioinformatics, drug discovery, and longevity research to produce new drugs and new therapies to extend healthy longevity significantly. So our core mission is to make you younger and healthier and actually performing better. But our company is pursuing a salami technique. You know, you have one big vision, but you have small slices that you can publish and produce to stay on the verge of credible. So we are located in Baltimore in the USA, at the campus of the Johns Hopkins University, their Biopark, the emerging technology centers. But we are global. We have resources in many countries. And I am affiliated with Insilico. I'm the CEO, but I also have a lot of nonprofit projects. I started about 15 years ago going into aging research. Before I used to work in a computer science company, the IT company called ATI. Made a lot of money working there, and then decided to spend all of that on aging research because I think that it's the most important cause that humanity is facing right now. And before going into commercial biotechnology, we developed a lot of nonprofit tools. Some of them are present here at the bottom. We look at government grants, so we look at how government spends the money into research projects related to biomedicine, so not specifically into aging. But as you know, investments in cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other diseases do contribute to the rate of progress in aging. And we also develop many other tools to track the developments in aging worldwide. So think of us as an umbrella company looking at many, many, many areas of aging research. And my core affiliation is with Insilico Medicine, which is a big data-driven company, which unites all this knowledge into 4 core areas that are converging. So artificial intelligence, drug discovery, big omics data, so it's really big repositories of biological data, all geared towards longevity research. And aging is humanity's biggest problem. Again, what do these candidates have in common? I mean, you probably haven't expected Trump to win, right? But, and there are huge differences between those 2 candidates. So one major common thing that they share is their age. So Trump is 70, well, 69 turning 70, and Hillary is 70. And the voter demographics is changing currently everywhere in the world. So people are preferring older candidates, and older people are voting. So also Brexit. You've heard about the UK exiting the European Union, which it took multiple nations and multiple global leaders many years to create. Now they're destroying it. Why? Because the demographics are changing. So younger people are looking more into the future, and older people are looking more into the past. And you have to think about how this changing demographics is going to affect Korea. Maybe surprisingly, you know, some people in the north decide to actually unite, and you have a referendum and say no. That would be a major surprise, right? We want to avoid that. This graph is very messy, but it shows you the population growth over time worldwide. And you can see some of the key technological trends and discoveries mapped over time. So it took us 400 years for the population to double from 500 million to 1 billion, then another 160 years for it to double again from 1 billion to 2 billion, and then just 60 years for it to more than triple to 7.5 billion. It's a huge increase, unexpected increase. You know, it's basically, you can think about Korean economic growth since the 80s. It kind of resembles this chart. So very recent advances, humanity has tripled in numbers. And most of the biomedical advances also happened in those 60 years. And it takes much longer for us to get the technology, anti-aging technology and biomedical technology on the market than it takes us to get an IT product. Samsung or LG may create a cell phone and put it on the market in 1 year. For us to get the drug on the market, it takes more than 10 years, and we've got 92% failure rate. So it's a much slower pace, but all of those advances are going to propagate in the clinic, and you are going to see people living even longer. So regardless of what we do today in the labs, you are going to be living longer than your parents and grandparents already. And you can see that there is another trend, this small curve right here. Oops. It's not visible here. It's the small curve right here on the bottom shows you the population over 65. It's a new phenomenon for the humanity. It's something that we have never seen before. Previously in Germany, the social security system was designed in 1887. Otto von Bismarck set the retirement age at 65, when less than 1% of the population really achieved this age and enjoyed social security. Nowadays, everybody is enjoying this. So this creates a huge burden for the economy, for any world's economy, and specifically for the US, because it's kind of the breathing and living heart of the global economy. There, the population is also aging, and the costs associated with medical care for the population are huge. And they are putting a lot of burden and slowing down the growth of the economy. So in fact, in a very debt-laden economy, where countries with older populations already accumulated enormous government debts, that could lead to economic collapse. And one of my hobbies is economics. So I published a book called The Ageless Generation, How Advances in Biomedicine are going to change the global economy. And it was translated into Chinese and Japanese, which shows that right now we're at the point of human evolution where we can either accelerate research and make people younger, or we can have a possible economic collapse. Also, aging research is the most altruistic cause humanity can pursue right now. All of us want to be good, right? But how do you quantify good? How do you put a number on how good you are? So this number can be derived from quality-adjusted life years that you generate. How many good years you're giving to everybody on the planet. And if you cure cancer, you are probably going to get about 20 billion QALYs, so basically quality-adjusted life years for everybody on the planet. That's not much, because not everybody gets cancer, and usually you get it in the older years. But if you add just one additional year to everybody's life in the population, in the global population, you create 7.6 billion QALYs right now. And you can be the ultimate altruist by basically marginally extending everybody's life on the planet. Also, it's the most pressing economic challenge. You can think about global warming, you can think about alternative energy. Those causes can be addressed later. Right now, we need to really address aging, because we do have maybe another 10, 15, 20 years for the global economy to sustain before we get buried under the economic burden of aging population. And also, but the good news is that right now we are getting all the tools together. I'm not going to go too much into detail into the slide, but over the past 10 years, we saw a major revolution, and actually 5 major revolutions in biomarkers of aging. So now you have very accurate tools to be able to measure the rate of aging. And my team created 2 of those tools. So we have the transcriptomic aging clock and the biochemistry aging clock. I'm going to talk about that. So you can actually measure the effectiveness of the interventions that you are doing, that you are taking as therapies for anti-aging. There is also major advances in cancer immunotherapy. So, melanoma patients that respond to that therapy go home cured, so complete miracles. And right now, every big pharma company has a checkpoint inhibitor in their portfolio. Those are drugs that essentially make cancer cells look like foreign cells again to your own immune system. So your own immune system starts eating those cancers quickly. So again, this is major revolutions just past 10 years. Gene editing, Bill already, I think, touched on this a little bit. So now you have the ability to redesign your genome. There are major advances in regenerative medicine, new artificial organs, induced pluripotent stem cells, and you can also reprogram yourself already in your body. And the revolution that I'm going to be talking about is in deep learning, is artificial intelligence. So some of those concepts that have been proposed many decades ago are now coming to life with the availability of big data. And also, aging is much more complex than any other disease. It's a combination of many, many factors. And here you have just some few hallmarks of aging. And Bill talked about telomere attrition as one of the factors. But there are many, many other factors that make us older. And you have to address all of them. No one single person can comprehend that intelligently. So that's why we need artificial intelligence systems to really help us solve aging. And now, I mean, just 10 years ago, it would have been a really nice promise. And you probably would say, oh, this is a futurist. He's talking about something that doesn't come to life anytime soon. Well, now you've seen the Korean Go champion, Lee Sedol, being defeated by one of those deep learned systems that identified and went through billions of combinations very, very quickly to identify the optimal strategy. So as I've mentioned, right now there is a revolution in deep learning. So it's an area, a branch of machine learning that is kind of biologically inspired, where we're trying to model as much as possible biological systems in a computer. So you've got multiple small neurons. We essentially are recreating the neurons as algorithms in high-performance computing space and putting them into layers, pretty much like the human brain. So you've got the visual layer, the input layer, that takes in a lot of information, and then it passes it through multiple layers of neurons, you know, cortex 1, cortex 2, cortex 3, just like the human brain does. And then you get some output. And you train those networks with a lot of data to recognize all kinds of patterns. This is how we learn. Most of those techniques can now be implemented in algorithms. But what's important here is that the advances made in deep learning over the past just 5 years have been spectacular, unprecedented. So we surpassed human-level accuracy in image recognition, text recognition, voice recognition just this year. All of those Tesla and Google cars are autonomous driving are using deep learning. Now you can also create pleasant art, compose pleasant music, and defeat the Go champion. And all that started, well, with the ImageNet, a very large competition for images. A large number of high-resolution images were put online, and people were asked to compete to classify those images. And below, you've got a chart basically showing the error rates in this competition. So in 2010, it was almost 30%. 2015, just last year, computers surpassed human accuracy in image recognition. And that's what I'm talking about when we're talking about image recognition and also describing that in context. This is the work of Andrej Karpathy from Stanford. He now works for OpenAI. Now you can recognize the object and also put it in the context. So it's a woman in white dress standing with a tennis racket, two people in green behind her. This system describes the image better than I can. Also, this is, we consider it to be already old school, where you take a convolutional neural net to identify objects on the picture, and then a recurrent neural net to generate language. And in this case, you give it a picture, and it accurately describes, the system accurately describes the picture. So in this case, it's a group of people shopping at an outdoor market, or a group of young people playing a game of frisbee. Very accurate descriptions. Now you can also do style transfer, so train the networks on one painter's style, make it a two-bit doodle painting, and then create your own two-bit doodle painting, and it will create pleasant art. You can take a picture, give it to the network, it will create pleasant art. And I'm going to skip this slide, but I just wanted to show you that we can also have deep neural networks trained on large numbers of images to imagine new images on demand. So basically, you give a network a description. So this small bird has a pink breast and crown and black primaries and secondaries, and it will imagine new images. It will not Google it. It will imagine those. This is the hottest topic in deep learning right now, and also it's very new. So Reed just published it in ICML in June. So our company is using the same technique to imagine new molecular structures. So we're not only searching already existing molecules, we're teaching networks to create new molecules upon demand. So let's say we want a cancer drug that goes into the brain and cures cancer, and creates it. So just a moment of fun, Microsoft created a really cool tool where you can take a snapshot of your face and it will guess your age reasonably accurately. It's not ours, it's Microsoft's. And I recently gave a talk at a big conference in France, at an actuarial conference. Those people are dealing with a lot of big data. And I Googled their recent conference, gave it to how old, and it guessed accurately, more or less accurately, everybody's age. So you can try it yourself. And this gentleman is the head of actuarial school. When I first met him, I thought that he is 55, just because of the context and his position. But he's actually 37. So this system guessed his age even more accurately than I could. So what we decided to do, a lot of what we do is inspired by advances in imaging, voice, and text, but we apply those recent developments to biological data. And we created a tool called Aging AI, where you can upload some of your recent parameters from a recent blood test, very simple and cheap blood test that you get from your doctor, and it will guess your age. And sometimes it guesses it right, sometimes it guesses it wrong. Actually, for the Asian population, it doesn't work that well yet because we didn't have a large training set. And we published a paper in a very prestigious journal in aging, where we show that we can now accurately predict your age and gender by your blood test, using the very same technique that Microsoft is using for recognizing your age using your facial data. And this is how the deep neural network ensemble looks like. So we take a very large number of samples. I'm not going to go through it. We took 1.1 million people, selected only 62,000 healthy ones, and then trained a very large number of single-class deep neural nets to recognize their age. And now we recognize their age with 5.5 mean absolute error. So basically, every time we guess, we are, on average, 5.5 years away from the actual parameters. But what is interesting about this test is that if you look older to the network, most likely you're sick or aging faster if it's doing it consistently. And then you can test the effectiveness of all kinds of interventions to see if you start looking younger to the network. And we are also one of the first companies to apply artificial intelligence to develop new nutraceuticals, so small molecules that you can actually sell over the counter without going through clinical trials because they are derived from natural products. And with life extension, with a company in the US that has a huge subscriber base, more than 350,000 people subscribe to their catalogs, we're going to launch a new pill that hopefully will make you younger. And that is one of the very few companies that also allow you to do blood testing. So you would be able to see if the pill works. So we are one of the first companies to make a prediction in silico and put it in a human. We also run a competition for data scientists now, similar to ImageNet, where we give out biological data to computer scientists to create new algorithms to guess your age, develop better aging biomarkers, develop better skin aging biomarkers. So just recently we had a hackathon. So everybody I hire in my company, almost everybody, come through competitions. I don't care whether they have a Harvard degree or MIT or Moscow State University. If they win a 48-hour competition, they can work for me. So I really like to work with champions in data science. And we create competitions online for people to participate to cure aging. Also, moment of fun. just about a year ago, well, 2 years ago, almost, so a year and 8 months ago, I presented to a large cosmetics company in Paris, a very large one. And I said, oh, we've got those aging markers, and we've got those geroprotectors, we've got those drugs. They're saying, Alex, you know what, this is not interesting. What we're interested in is how you look and how you can measure the appearance of the person in time. And we decided to build a tool called Wrinkle, which tracks dynamically how your wrinkles forms over time with a small mobile app. And afterward, we also moved to create another competition where robots and humans compete to recognize human beauty and to evaluate human perception using various techniques. Nowadays, we've got participants from all over the world giving us ideas on how you can measure beauty. So that's the first beauty competition that is judged by robots. Again, artificial intelligence is entering into almost every area of life. In biomedicine, it's a little bit slower, but it's currently getting more and more popular. So we are presenting at many conferences worldwide, and we also run our own aging forum in Basel, in Switzerland, every year. This year, next year is going to be our 4th annual. We run it with large pharmaceutical companies, and it's free to attend, so please come and participate. And please use any of our resources that are listed here online, or you can contact me if you have any questions. And again, for me, it's a great honor to be in Korea. I hope that you become the first country to really tackle aging seriously and find ways to rejuvenate yourself, because you are a great country, great nation, and we really need to have those hard-working people with this great culture of innovation and hard work to stay in the labor force, be younger, and be rewarded for what you did. Because right now, I use maybe half of the electronics I use come from Korea. So, kamsahamnida, and thank you very much. Live long and prosper.
Good morning. It really is a pleasure to be here. As a couple of the speakers have noted, this is an amazing place to be technologically. In fact, this is an amazing city with 25 million people in it. It's interesting that South Korea apparently is rated #1 by the OECD for science and technology graduates. And Bloomberg, a very familiar business magazine, rates it #1 in innovation. So some of the things I'm going to say might seem a bit of a stretch, but after all, the theme of this conference is imagine, challenge, and create. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Imagine this. No one in this room needs to die. What? That can't be right. I must have misheard him. No one in this room needs to die. Well, obviously, these guys are trying to help with that. They're doing the research that, if it works out, will extend the human lifespan. And the goal, they might have been a little bit cagey about the end goal here, but the end goal is, let's get rid of aging. Not just slow it down and solve the problems by stretching out the curve and improving the economy, but a lot of people doing this work, really the end goal is to make aging just go away. That doesn't mean you're immortal, of course. Things can still kill you, but getting rid of aging, good idea. But we have a problem. In the meantime, we are aging right now, plus things happen like heart attacks, cancer. So how can I say that no one in this room needs to die? I'll come back to that. Let me just take a step back. Throughout most of human history, ever since we started developing the first tools, we have changed the external environment. We've created technology to change the world around us to suit us better. We're really just today in the early stages of changing the direction of that technology from out there to inside here, to change the human body, to change the brain, how the brain functions, to change our genetic structure, to change the aging process. We're in the early stages of that. You've seen quite a few of these technologies outlined already. Stem cells, cloning, which of course Korea is really a leader in, regenerative medicine, organ generation, actually growing organs in the lab now, out of embryo, out of stem cells, actually growing proto-organs. It used to be science fiction to say, in the next few years we'll be growing organs. It's no longer, sounds at all unlikely within the next 10 years or so. So that we're beginning to have a new direction here, and there's a philosophical view that expresses both the possibility and the desirability of using technology to transform the human condition, not just the external world, our fundamental condition. When I say the human condition, what do I mean? That's kind of a vague term. Well, I really mean the fundamental makeup of what it is to be human. We are beginning to have choices about that. We're going to change the way we think, the way we feel, how long we live. It's always been part of human nature to be mortal. That's a rather unfortunate design flaw. I think it should be up to us to decide how long we live. It's possible that, according to many people, you get bored if you live long enough. Someone sometimes asks me, do you really want to live forever? I said, I don't know. Ask me again in 1,000 years. I can't tell you right now. But how do we get from here to there? Well, the transhumanist view says that not only is it a desirable thing, not as a possible thing, it's actually desirable to change the human condition. It's kind of our responsibility. After all, who else is going to do it? Only human beings. Human beings, as far as we know, we don't know who else is out there in the universe, human beings are the conscious part of the universe. That's the way I like to think of it. We're part of the universe, we're natural beings, but most of the universe doesn't really think. Some animals kind of think a little bit, but we're the only ones with a true conceptual awareness who can decide to change our nature. So if we don't do it, nobody else is really going to. So in the idea of transhumanism, and particularly the concept of extropy, you may have heard of entropy. In entropy, the idea is in physics and thermodynamics, in a closed system, one with no energy coming from the outside, everything will tend towards disorder and decay. Now, the reason why that doesn't happen on Earth, the reason why we have evolution and things get more complex and evolve, is it's not a closed system. We have energy coming from the sun that powers that increasing order. The concept of extropy is not a technical term, it's more of a metaphor, really bringing across the idea that in an open system, you can use that incoming energy in the form of technology, guided by reason and imagination, and the ability to be challenged and to shape it the way you want, and use that to keep increasing order and complexity. And if you do this, if you just keep doing this long enough, you have the idea of perpetual progress. That's part of the transhumanist idea. We've had the idea of progress for a little while. It hasn't always been around. There have been times in human history, or I should say, big chunks of different parts of the planet. For instance, in Europe, we had the Dark Ages for a long time. Actually, there were some changes then, but really, compared to today, there was no change really for 1,000 years. So perpetual progress is not something that happens on its own. It's something we have to make happen. So, okay, we have this idea that the world can keep improving, getting better through conscious choice and effort. And most important, I think, for us here today is to apply that in the area of life extension. Let's not accept the idea that we age and die by 70 or 80. It used to be 30 or 40. Actually, for many people, it was pretty much zero. Many people died in childbirth. Many women died in childbirth. Many of their children didn't make it. That's why in many cultures we still have too many children. That's been changing because most of them would die, and so you have to kind of overshoot to make sure you have enough children to take care of yourselves. Aging and death seem inevitable, but they're not, right? Everybody agrees it's not inevitable. We're going to do something about it. But in the meantime, we have this problem. As I said, things can happen. Maybe you're already kind of old. Maybe you're going to have a heart attack. Maybe you have an aneurysm, a stroke. All kinds of things can happen to you. So how do we get from here to there? The world where there is no more aging. If I have time, I'll try to address a little bit about why that's actually a good thing and why it's desirable. A lot of people say, well, this is not natural. It's not natural for humans to live indefinitely. I'm not using the word forever because it's not forever. An asteroid could land on your head, and that's the end of you. Someone could shoot you. There's all kinds of things that could happen. I'm just talking about agelessness, not immortality. Is it really unnatural? Well, that's why I like the idea that we are part of nature. We are the conscious part of nature that creates progress. How can it be unnatural for us to use our natural capabilities to change the world, including ourselves? I think that's a very natural thing. It would not really be natural for humans to fail to do that, I think. All right, so there's a big gap here. We've got this future, sometime in the future, depends on who you ask. The super optimistic people think, maybe in about 30 years, especially with artificial intelligence helping out, we might have solved all these problems. Alex was talking about how his machines, AI, and I think Bill too, can sort through more and more chemicals, chemical combinations, looking for targets and solutions. If that keeps improving, maybe in 30 years we will have solved all these problems, but we don't really know that for sure. Well, there is a way. There is something we can do. How do you get this to move forward? Oh, there we go. The down button, okay. Oh, that's the button that goes ping.
Max, you're holding it in the right
No.
wrong direction. Yeah, yeah,
But it's still not going to anything.
try it another time. There is one slide.
Oh, they didn't put the other slides on that. Okay. All right, so we don't have my other slides, but that's fine. All right, so getting from here to there requires some way of basically kind of a time travel, if you like, medical time travel. If there's a future in which we don't age and die, there is a way of getting there. And I said nobody in this room has to die. I'm going to make good on that promise, because there is a means you can use right now which has a pretty good chance of working and allowing you to get to that time in the future when this is no longer a problem. What is that solution? What does that mean? It's called cryopreservation, human cryopreservation, or usually for short, just cryonics. How many people have heard of that? I have no idea how well known it is in South Korea. Cryonics? Okay, just a few people. Well, I think all the Americans, actually. Okay, so it's not a very familiar idea. Well, right now we use very cold temperatures to preserve all kinds of tissues. If you think about it, we cryopreserve corneas, heart valves, skin, sperm, eggs, and of course in vitro fertilization. If you think about it, there are actually a couple of million people walking around the planet today who were cryopreserved at one point. They were in liquid nitrogen or liquid nitrogen vapor at extremely cold temperatures. Of course, they were embryos at the time. They were implanted and they grew up. Interestingly, some of those embryos, there are siblings who were actually conceived at the same time but are born 16 or more years apart. So that shows that you can actually put life on hold, at least at that stage. There's also a lot of research into organ cryopreservation. This is an area that could save a huge number of lives. There are so many people dying every year because they cannot get a tissue match. They need a heart or lung or kidneys, and it's not available. Maybe there's someone across the other side of the continent, which in the US is kind of a long way, who have a tissue match, but they can't get it to you on time. They will cool it down and try and protect it and get it to the patient, but 100,000 people per year are dying because they can't get organs. There is research going on right now, including a partner to the organization I work with, the Alcohol Life Extension Foundation, a company in California that has actually successfully cryopreserved rabbit kidneys, which means they've put them essentially at a super cold temperature, cryogenic temperatures, kept them there for months, rewarmed them using some very special methods, implanted it into the rabbit, and that kidney functioned again. If you can do that, just imagine you can have cryobanking of tissues. You can keep them all in a bank, in a hospital. If you need one, we take it out, throw it out, pop it in, you're good to go. So that could save a huge number of lives. That's something that has actually already been done to a limited extent, and it's quite plausible that in 10 years we'll be able to do a lot more of that. So before I get to the details of human cryopreservation, I want to point out that we're already doing this to a certain degree. We're doing it in individual tissues, dozens of different tissues we can cryopreserve reversibly. We're starting to do it to whole organs, which is more difficult. And if you think about it, the brain, kind of the important part, the brain's an organ. So if we can show we can do it to organs, that means presumably we can do it to the brain. And the brain is the most important part. This is all replaceable. We live inside here. We are essentially encoded in the physical structure of our brains, in the connections inside the neural bodies. If you can preserve that, you've been preserved. You've basically been put on hold. It's like pushing a button, to oversimplify, the pause button. Everything's on hold. You can unpause it later in the future when we have the technology to actually reverse that process and reverse the aging process. We're not going to bring you back as an old person. That would be a bit pointless. So that's already in the works. That's already starting to happen. Now, I said I'm talking about reversing the process. It's more difficult with complex organisms. But the great thing about cryopreservation is you don't have to be able to do that today. You can wait. Once you're stored in liquid nitrogen, and that's how we store people, it's a very convenient, relatively inexpensive storage medium, that's at minus 196 degrees Celsius, minus 320 Fahrenheit. That's very, very cold, far colder than the freezer you have in your fridge. That's good for a few months. This is good for actually thousands and thousands of years, much longer than we should need. So it looks pretty plausible. This is something we can do. Plus, the scientific and medical communities are beginning to pay attention a bit more and no longer to dismiss this as science fiction, partly because they see organ cryopreservation research, also because there are other areas that are starting to come together. It used to be that cryonics was over here and medicine was over here, and now they're kind of starting to meet in the middle a little bit. So apart from the organ cryopreservation work, another area is low temperature surgery. You might have come across this. For a while now, people have been dropping people in temperature by about 10 degrees C. Now, what's the purpose of this? It's really to slow down metabolism. So it's the same process that I'm talking about, but only the very beginning stages. Now, more recently, there's been a bit more radical attempt by Dr. Peter Ree, who's based quite near me, actually, in the University of Arizona in Tucson, working with a hospital in Pittsburgh. What he's doing is taking people with gunshot wounds or other very severe trauma who normally could not be operated on because they just bleed out on the operating table. They just bleed out too fast, you can't operate. But by reducing them all the way down from the 30s down to just 10 degrees C, much colder than anybody's done human surgery before, he's able to extend the time he has to work by 400%. So everything slowed down. You've got time to work. Well, we're just saying, well, let's take this a little bit further. And actually, Dr. Ree has been to visit Alcor, and he didn't say, oh, this is not going to work. He said, oh, yeah, this is pretty sensible. This basic principle is right. You're kind of more radical than what I'm doing, but yeah, this is worth trying. So this is what we do, the basic process. People make arrangements in advance. You don't want to leave this to the last minute. That's a very bad idea. So people make arrangements. They fund it usually with life insurance. It's not really that expensive for a surgical procedure, but life insurance usually covers it very easily. In a good situation, which isn't always the case, we'll be at your bedside. We'll send out a standby team, as we call them, because they stand by at the bedside and they wait. And because of the law today, and this may well change, we have to wait until a doctor says, I declare you legally dead. Now, what does that mean? Some people say, well, what's the point that they're dead? Well, that's not really very imaginative. After all, just think back 50 years or so. Let's say that someone here stopped breathing. Their heart stopped, they stopped breathing. 50 years ago, we would have checked, yeah, he's dead. Take him away, burn him, bury him, whatever you do. We don't do that today. We say, well, that's pretty irresponsible. Let's get someone here, let's do CPR, let's defibrillation if we have to. There's all kinds of things we can do to resuscitate the person. So 50 years ago, we said, they're dead. Today, we don't think that. We say, well, they will be dead if we don't do something soon. What we're saying is when today, it's really just the same situation, today the doctor says you're dead, the doctor's actually wrong. You will be dead if we don't intervene. The purpose of cryonics is really an extension of emergency medicine. We're saying don't give up at that point. That's crazy. You've got to stop them getting worse. And how do you do that? Well, what we do is the standby team will take you from the hospital bed, put you into an ice bath. I would have had a picture to show you of that. If you go to the website at alcor.org, alcor.org, you can find lots of illustrations of this process. We'll put you in the ice bath, add water to it, circulate icy water around you to accelerate the cooling process. We're then going to restart respiration. We have a machine that basically does CPR. That gets pretty tiring if you do it manually, you'll find. So the machine does it perfectly and tirelessly. We also have a respirator, so you replace your breathing. So even though you're being called dead, we're actually starting everything up again. And we're going to give you about 16 different medications in the current protocol to protect the cells. So this part of the procedure looks a lot like what happens with organ transplant. You want to keep the tissues viable for as long as possible. So the injections we give start with propofol, which, at least in America, everybody knows, thanks to Michael Jackson, who took too much of it and stopped breathing. But the idea of that is to slow metabolism. It also just makes sure you won't wake up during this process, because just because you're supposedly dead doesn't mean you couldn't wake up. But there's a bunch of other things, antacids, membrane stabilizers, a lot of other things we put in there to protect the cells. And then we're going to move you from the hospital or hospice bed to our facility, Alcor. There could be a few other steps, but I'll keep this relatively simple. At Alcor, we call in a surgeon. We have a bunch of surgeons on call, and they will, say for a whole body case, some people just preserve the brain. After you can get rid of the rest, you can replace it, maybe clone it or regenerate it. You guys know about cloning, so I probably don't need to convince you too much that that's a feasible thing. But if it's a whole body, they usually go in through the chest, much like what's called a median stenotomy, access the major blood vessels of the heart, and then we'll connect your vascular system to a pump and a chiller, which also I had a slide of, and that will gradually remove the blood and the fluids from inside the cells over a period of a few hours and replace them with a cryoprotectant solution. Cryoprotectant is simply a medical-grade antifreeze. So this is designed to be as minimally toxic as possible while actually reducing or eliminating ice formation. Ice is not good. It won't necessarily destroy the cells entirely. That's actually a misconception, but it will certainly do a lot of damage. So we try to eliminate the ice formation and not freeze the patient, but vitrify. Vitrify comes from the word for glass. Essentially, the material, as you cool it down, becomes more and more viscous and locks everything in place with no internal structure, no crystal structure to damage the cell membranes. And that was what was used in the rabbit kidney. It's exactly what happened there. It was vitrified. And it was reversible. At that point, once you've got you vitrified, once you cryoprotected, we can plunge the temperature way down very rapidly. And then we've got to slow down a little bit because you really become a solid. And if you drop down too quickly, fracturing can happen, different tissues contract at different rates. But eventually you end up at this incredibly cold temperature, minus 196 degrees C, minus 320 Fahrenheit. At that temperature, you can sit there for 100 years, and you'll be just as good as you were after 1 hour. Everything has stopped. It hasn't just slowed down greatly, it's actually truly stopped at that point. Anything below about minus 130 degrees C is fine, actually. And then you wait. And you wait for these guys to solve the big problem of aging. That's got to be solved. No point coming back old and decrepit just to conk out again. And you have to wait until we have maybe a medical nanotechnology or whatever it takes to repair the damage to the cells from whatever killed you in today's sense, plus the additional damage that is definitely done by the cryopreservation process. Now, one of the slides I would have showed you is how we keep people. Basically, we're stored in very large, 10 feet tall metal containers called dewars, after Sir James Dewar from Scotland. But it's easy to imagine what these are like. If you've ever had a cup of coffee out of a thermos flask or a hot or cold drink, thermos flasks, they have a little vacuum layer and they keep the temperature of your drink. These are like very large, very expensive thermos flasks. And they usually contain 4 whole body patients and often several brains too. So our main job at Alcor is to keep you alive, or keep you maintained. You're not really alive at that point. You're kind of on hold, because you're on pause, until we have the technology to bring you back. And you might say, well, how do I know you'll be here long enough? Well, that's a good question. We've been around for 45 years now, and there's another organization that's been in 42 years. So some of us have some experience, and we are dedicated to the long haul. We're set up as a non-profit organization. We put a big chunk of the money that's paid into a separate fund that's managed by a board of trustees separate from our board of directors. 2/3 of them have to have a loved one who's been cryopreserved. So they have a very personal and direct stake in maintaining that money. And we have a rule, don't ever take out more than 2% a year, because what happens if we go like Japan and the market just doesn't ever go up for a quarter of a century? Well, 2% is a relatively safe draw. And that's been doing quite well. So this is definitely a big goal, right? This is kind of a challenge. People say, well, that's never going to work. But you know what? Why shouldn't it work? We have all this evidence coming in that we can actually cryopreserve all kinds of tissues, organs, and in fact, we even have direct evidence from brains. There are vitrified brains of a number of species now, where we've been able to take an electron microscope and look at it at the synaptic level and the neural level, and we can see if it's been done right. Everything is intact. The cell membranes are intact, the neurons are there, the connections are still there, so you are still there. We're just waiting for a chance to bring you back. Now, I think this is something that Korea can easily overtake the United States in. Recently, I've seen a lot of interest from China, and they've actually started the first organization over there. This country is tremendous for innovation and technology. So part of the conference is about challenge. I challenge you to do something about this. I'll be happy to talk to anybody who wants to try and get something going. I think obviously you have the infrastructure technologically. I think you have the will, and you're able to overcome traditional thinking. So I think cryonics could be a very big thing here. And as I said at the end, if you do this, no one in this room has to die. Thank you.
All right, well, that was 3 amazing speeches that we had, and really some of the biggest players in the life extension field. But now we have about 20 minutes to have a bit of a discussion, and I want to first off start with Jae-Sing Lim and ask him about his specialty, because we haven't actually talked about stem cells. So, Mr. Lim, if you would tell us a little bit about what you do and why you think stem cells can help us live longer and live better.
Thank you. And I'm actually leading R&D division in Cha Biotech and Cha Medical Group. Actually, we are developing the cell therapy product for aging disease, including age-related macular degeneration, acute stroke, Alzheimer, and cancers. And we believe that the cell therapy is like oriental medicine, and it's boosting your systemic health using cells. So it's not treating one molecules or one target proteins. So we're changing your body using your own cells and then increasing your immunity and health system to fight back against your own disease. So I think it's kind of natural healing system. So we're developing these kind of cell therapies for aging society.
So what I have here is a big question that I want to ask everybody on the panel. We can just kind of go. You may know I just finished a presidential candidacy in the United States of America. After 2 years, I campaigned for 731 days, and I usually ran in seventh in terms of visibility of all the candidates. And one of the things I was trying to do in my candidacy, which is a bit controversial, is try to classify aging as a disease. And that way, federal funding from governments would go directly into treating aging as a disease, sort of like we would treat cancer, where we would put billions of dollars into it. And I wanted to ask everyone on the panel what they think about that. Now, don't get me wrong, many Americans would not want to classify aging as a disease, and I'm not sure how many South Koreans would want to as well. But this is something that I think, generally speaking, the longevity community at least wants to consider and probably advocates for. So, Bill, why don't you give me a little bit and just kind of run down and tell me what you think about classifying aging as a disease in order to get more government funding directly to confront aging.
Okay. Okay, this mic is on. I definitely believe that aging is a disease, and even though we all suffer from it, doesn't make it not a disease. I think people will all believe that it is a disease when we actually have a cure for it. But in the meantime, there are other animals on this planet, and some of them actually don't have any detectable aging process. And that includes lobsters, humpback whales, tortoises, clams, some fish, and some birds. They have no detectable aging. It was only like about 150 years ago when people first started asking these questions. And the only way to tell how long an animal will live, because we don't have rings on a tree, is to be there when they're born and see how long they live. Well, some of these animals are close to 200 years old now and not showing any signs of aging. Well, if they can do it, we should be able to do it. But we have a disease that won't allow us to do it. And it turned out every one of those animals that I just mentioned have telomerase already produced in all their cells, and they have no telomere shortening. And they also have very rare incidences of diseases such as cancer and other diseases. So I do believe that we just need to we need to cure our disease to make us more like those other animals. And I think that's going to really start generating a lot of funding for research, which is the bottleneck for anti-aging research, as soon as everybody starts recognizing it as a disease. Thank you.
My microphone is enabled, right? Right now. Perfect. Regardless of what we think about aging in the context of disease, you might think about yourself as being sick or not with aging. There is an international classification of diseases run by the World Health Organization. It's called ICD, and right now they're actually closing, so they are defining diseases every 10 years. And next year, they're going to close ICD-11, which is going to be the international classification of diseases for the next 10 years. If you are not in that particular book of diseases, if you are not in the classification of diseases, as a condition, it's very difficult for pharmaceutical companies and for healthcare organizations to build business cases around the condition. So, regardless of what we think, unless aging is in that book or age-related conditions are in that book, it is very difficult for pharmaceutical companies and healthcare providers to make business cases for anti-aging drugs, because they need to go through the regulatory procedures, and there needs to be a prescription policy to prescribe pills to people. So it is very important for us, regardless of what we think, to campaign to classify aging as a disease. And there are two schools of thought. You can classify it as a single condition, a single disease, which is probably not going to do much difference. Or we can deconvolute aging into multiple age-related conditions. Like, for example, I'll give you an example, sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is a loss of muscle during aging, where you actually lose muscle mass, you gain more fat, and if you just recently it got classified as a disease, and pharmaceutical companies are rushing in to develop new drugs to help you build muscle during aging. So I think that is very important to have many conditions classified as diseases that are age-related, so that pharmaceutical companies can build business models and start developing drugs for aging, so everybody can start taking them.
I totally agree with everything Alex just said, so I'll just add a little bit. In the United States, we have an agency called the FDA, which stands for Federal Death Administration. Food and Drug Administration. But they really do cause a lot of deaths by having this regulatory process that costs huge amounts to get new treatments approved, actually more than just about any other country in the world. But in addition, as Alex said, you can't get a drug even looked at unless it can be classified as a disease, and until that's recognized, that's a huge problem. So yes, regardless of what we say intellectually about whether it's a disease or a set of diseases, or the outcome of diseases, let's call it a disease, because it'd be very valuable to do so. But to do that, I think we have to overcome this mindset, again, as I already kind of hinted at, that aging and death is natural and is okay because it's always happened. Well, I'm sorry, but no. We had slaves for a long time too, that was very natural, but we don't think that's okay. So we have to change the public mindset as well as the governmental, and they kind of both go together to a certain extent. So yes, let's call aging a disease.
I believe that aging causes lots of disease. So nowadays, new technology like gene sequencing and everything, you can predict and prevent disease. So actually, medical paradigm is shifting from treatment of disease to now well-being and also live well. I think the aging, most important thing is actually you live well. So quality of life is important. So prediction and prevention can be treated with medical inventions. And so even though the aging itself cannot easy to be categorized as a disease, but if you can show that you can predict and prevent the disease caused by aging, and then you can be approved by FDA, so-called. So you can make the drugs for prevention of your disease caused by aging, I believe.
We just have time for, I think, one more quick question. So this is a big one that I've been dealing with a lot, as everyone has asked me, how much money, and you have to understand, as everyone here has sort of explained, the biggest problem, the biggest bottleneck we face with longevity science is there's just not enough funding in the field right now. When you compare it to something like the military, for example, America spends 20% of its gross domestic product on defense, on wars, but we only spend about a fraction of that on anything that would be considered anti-aging, literally a fraction versus 20%. So let's go down real quickly and just say, if you were going to put out a magic number, and I've gone on the record saying that the world would spend $1 trillion, we could make it so not just everyone in this room or everyone in this country, but probably everyone around the world would have a much better chance to live to 150 to 200, which is probably reasonable if we could just get the resources to the scientists, to the universities, to the companies that needed to develop anti-aging drugs and anti-aging techniques. So my number that I was going around in my campaign talking about was $1 trillion over 10 years for stopping death itself. I want to know what these panelists think. And bear in mind, just as we answer this, the net worth of the world is 200 to 400 trillion dollars. So if we just spend even 1 trillion, we're still talking a fraction of the world's net worth to stop everybody from dying. So Bill?
It's amazing. Scientists know exactly what to do to cure aging. I mean, I don't want to make telomeres sound like it's the only cause of aging, but I'm glad other scientists like Aubrey de Grey are working on other things like oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, accumulation of junk. All these things cause aging. We need to solve them all eventually. But I think that the obstacle isn't that we don't know what we're doing. The obstacle is we know exactly what we're doing, and the problem is the lack of funding. And I think $1 trillion would be way more than we actually need to actually accomplish that goal. So if there was $1 trillion, aging would be cured in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I run a resource which tracks government funding, and we track around $1 trillion worth of funding going to many diseases. So I think it's not about how much money you have to spend, but how you spend it. So you need to spend it on a very, very targeted age-related campaign, on a very age-related program. And for that, I think even a few billion would be able to solve aging. You know, I intrinsically believe if you put 50 million or 100 million in our company, we probably would be able to solve aging as well. Funny, but that's probably true, because AI has the ability to scale technology to many other areas of life sciences. I think basically if you put it in a targeted way, it's probably $2 billion to $5 billion.
Yeah, actually something I meant to say in my talk is I think it really is time for something like a Manhattan Project or an Apollo project, where there's not just companies, but an official commitment to do something about aging. This is the problem, it's the main problem we need to deal with. We spend huge amounts of money on heart disease and cancer research, which is fine, but it could be spent far more effectively at dealing with aging itself. These are age-related diseases. With a few exceptions, they'll pretty much go away if you fix the aging problem. So we're wasting money on very bad investments. So I think if we have a focused effort, I mean, if you think about it, 1960 in America, let's put a man on the moon in 10 years. That seemed crazy at the time. We didn't have the life support systems or the rockets or anything else. We did it. This is a complex problem, but I agree, it probably wouldn't take $1 trillion. If I was the dictator of the world, I could just make people spend money, I would probably start fairly modestly. I'd just 10 times, 100, no, 50 times what we're spending now on real aging, and then increase it a bit each year. Otherwise, you're probably just going to waste a lot of money. It probably wouldn't take that much. But yeah, we need a real project and a focus to do this today.
Yeah, I completely agree with Alex. Actually, it's more important actually to think about how we spend and how we analyze actually the aging, and also scientifically we have to prove that any method to prevent aging is needed. And maybe Alex and I work together to prove that the regenerative medicine is working in preventing aging, and then maybe we can analyze the data, and we can show that this kind of approach can be work or not is in the future, we believe.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being on the panel. Bill, Alex, Max, and Jason, we appreciate it so much, and I appreciate you listening to us, and I hope you'll take a much deeper look into anti-aging science and how everyone in this room and everyone in this country and the world can live a lot longer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. And while we still have you guys on the stage, we'll move on to the special lecture. 네, 이어서 바로 의료 패러다임 전환이라는 주제로 특별 강연이 이어질 예정입니다. 오늘 특별 강연은 두 분께서 수고해 주시는데요. 당초 특별 강연을 해주실 예정이었던 차광렬 차병원 그룹 총괄회장 되신 문지숙 차의과대학교 바이오공학과 부교수와 캐나다 나이가드 인터내셔널의 캐나다 카이 나이가드께서 수고해 주시겠습니다. 먼저 문지숙 차의과대학교 바이오공학과 부교수를 무대 위로 모시겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Moon Ji-suk, Associate Professor of College of Life Science, Cha University. Please welcome her with a warm round of applause.
Hey everyone, this is Ji-suk Moon at Cha University, not Chairman Cha, surprisingly. Sorry for that. Today I'm going to talk about the paradigm shift in healthcare from treatment to prevention and management. Worldwide, centenarians are the first group, estimated 450,000 worldwide. At 2050, about 4 million centenarians will be. Living longer is not always good things. The most important thing is how to live healthy. This article is saying that A to B Standard medicine increases lifespan by preventing death from age-related disease. At the same time, increases a number of old people suffering from age-related disease. That means we need a lot of money for that. From B to 3, anti-aging intervention will slow down aging and delay the onset of age-related disease, meaning that we have to focus on subclinical aging part. Let me see. Sorry, it's hard to. Okay, the yellow part. That way we can have more longer health span, not longer life. We need a health span. So today I'm going to talk about 3 parts. First part is anti-aging intervention using cord blood. And second part is treatment of age-related disease using various stem cells. And if I have time more, I'm going to talk about prevention and management of aging. Okay, as I said, treatment of age-related disease is very important, and which we are doing right now. That way we can delay aging a little bit. We focus on gray zone area from 40 to 65. What is gray zone? It's like, even though we don't have obvious disease, we feel tired. After alcohol drinking, you feel more tired, but we don't have any disease. That is gray zone. You might feel that. No? Okay. So we focus on gray zone by checking or detection, management of this gray zone. We feel like we're going to have more healthy aging and more anti-aging intervention. We might have anti-aging, get younger. So now I focus on the anti-aging intervention for using young cord blood. Using cord blood worldwide, actually, people used fat cells for the cerebral palsy therapy. As you can see, a lot of groups have studied that part. And our group actually did a huge double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial using a lot of cerebral palsy patients. And that child showed that after 3 months after transplantation, her movement is much better and their motor functions are improved. And her brain shows that more changes in fiber, and their brain shows that anti-inflammatory effect is improved, whereas the pro-inflammatory factors is decreased by stem cell therapy. Now we expand the target disease using cord blood stem cell, including like a stroke, traumatic brain injury, Alzheimer's disease. Human cord blood or cord blood plasma, it is youngest blood in the body we can get and easy to supply, and there are no ethical issues. Also, it has low immune rejection responses. So now we investigate whether the human cord blood can reverse or prevent age process. One huge ongoing study, which is first human clinical trial using umbilical cord blood plus cord blood young plasma. This is a double-blind randomized plasma-controlled study, and 80 subjects have done, and now more than 200 subjects are waiting list. There is specific information in clinicaltrial.gov. Worldwide, somehow people love young blood. This Bethany, the first example of the Bethany woman, she loves young blood. She bathed in blood of virgins to retain her youth. The middle part showing that this novel predicts that in the future, people will rejuvenate through regular blood exchanges. And North Korea detector Kim Il-sung also predict that using blood exchange, he can live like more than 100. And a recent article saying that maybe people can live beyond 120 using blood exchange. More specifically, this article saying that living till 120 might not be a good thing, maybe a curse than blessing. But after reading articles and scientific evidence, this journalists say that science has gained the ability to intervene successfully in the aging process and to delay and to selectively reverse its effect. So, historically, people love blood, and people predict that blood exchange might be a key for the rejuvenation. And scientifically, 2004 first proved that young blood is good for the anti-aging, this group. In summary, this group saying that, old mouse who got the young blood, old mice muscle, blood, neurons are getting younger. And they found a systematic factor in young blood, which is GDF11, the bottom one, GDF11. Oh, I'd better check with this one. Okay. Oh, not working. Okay. GDF11. Even only injection of GDF11 can reverse aging. That's what this article is saying that. Other groups also show that similar effect, and this article is saying that the heterochromatic aged mice muscle is almost same as young muscle, and their regeneration index is almost identical to the young animal, meaning that old animal who got the young blood get younger. And a lot of other groups also prove that. And most of results are in the high impact journal. Based on this scientific result, US groups start clinical trial. This case, they using 40 years old plasma, 30 years old plasma, and for the Alzheimer's disease. And second company just start the human clinical trial. They enroll 600 people actually, and they got the donor 25 years old blood. They don't really put the red blood, they use the plasma from the young blood. Second example for the anti-aging might be the natural killer cell, NK cells. Many articles show that NK cell aging is positively related to the aging process. So using NK therapy might be, we can get younger or anti-cancer and also improve immune functions. So we're working on that part too. Second part of my talk is treatment of age-related disease using various disease. There are various stem cells we can use, embryonic stem cell and fetus and other stem cell. The question is, what is the ideal source for the target disease? It's a target disease. Each cell has their own characterization. Like for the brain disease, we have to use brain cells, not mesenchymal stem cells. So it's important to check what kind of cells we have to use for the specific disease. Currently, a lot of companies worldwide work on that, and more than 67 billion revenue will be used for that by 2020. And right now, about 900 clinical trials ongoing. Most of them deal with other stem cell, and some using embryonic stem cell, because embryonic stem cell is pluripotent, might have some safety issue. But the other stem cell, less potency, but more safe. So that's the reason people using other stem cells more. Telehealth system have a lot of pipelines for the stem cell therapy. As I said, we used many different kinds of stem cells for each different target disease. I'll show you one or two examples for that. First example is fetal stem cell, neuroprogenital cells for the Parkinson's disease. Previously, maybe 20 years ago, people used 5 to 6 embryo brain for the one patient. We developed just use one brain and expand cells so that we can treat more than 50,000 patients. That way we can overcome limited cell sources and reduce ethical issues, and cells are homogeneous. And we published that expanded cells are successfully characterized and those cells are safe. And using that cell, we transplanted 12 patients, and so far 9 patients have been analyzed. Their motor functions getting improved. Our facility have GMP facility where the cells produces near surgery room. That way, cell delivery is very short and there's no contamination of cells. And 4 months after transplantation, patients' motor functions getting improved. And this is analysis using 9 patients. In the middle group, they start to show the significant improvement in their motor functions. And second example is embryonic stem cells. 2010, 2011, we got the approval from USA and Korean FDA together. And since this is an embryonic stem cell line, we have to differentiate embryonic stem cell to the RPE product. And the RPE is retinal pigment epithelial cell. We inject that cell into the eye for the Stargardt disease and age-related macular degenerative disease. And this one shows that the cells are injected into the eyeball. And the bottom left, the arrow showing that cells are well grafted and they are functional, and the visual acuity has been changed. They can start to see. And last example is SCNT stem cell and iPSCs. And that is good sources for their overcoming immune rejection. When stem cells, let's say if I get other people's stem cell into my body feel like, oh, those are not mine, and my body immune system will kill the injected cells. That's immune rejection. So it's important to reduce immune rejection cells. The iPS cells, SCNT cells are personalized cells, so hosts really don't reject the cell much. 1962, the Gordon group produced SCNT first time. In 2006, Yamanaka group developed iPSCs. Those 2 groups won Nobel Prize. In 2013, Vitelipov group first proved a human SCNT from fetal fibroblast. 1214 Cha group developed SCNT using other fibroblasts. You might not familiar with this term. So this slide shows that what is SCNT in iPS. You can track the color. The somatic cell in the middle, they are other cell. Let's say take out my skin fibroblasts, that's somatic cells. And then for the iPS, just inject 4 embryonic stem cell genes, 4 factors. And even only injecting 4 factors, the cells getting younger. That's iPS, ES stem cell. And for the SCNT stem cell, we use egg and take out the nucleus from egg and put my nucleus into the yellow cytosol. The yellow cell, SCNT, is mine because nucleus has my own genome. So that's my cell, I can say. That's the personalized one. There is a pro and con between 2 cells. So we published the result, and this slide is showing that take out nucleus from egg and inject the somatic nucleus cell into the egg. And the final bottom one is now is embryonic stem cells, not other stem cells. And this one shows that SCNT is the same as embryonic stem cell. The genomics chromosomes are same as the original cells. And using this SCNT, we are preparing clinical application. So let's say we take out the patient's cells and make SCNT and differentiate it into the RP product and inject the RP cells into the patient. That's the personalized treatment. So patient might get his own cells, meaning that the host will not be able to inject the cells. That's what we're working on. And this one says the RP cells from patients are same as the original cells, and SCNT RP is the same as ES-derived RP. That's the characterization. So future study for the SCNT is for the public. We all want to use these SCNT cells. How? Since I don't have enough time, I'll explain short. Using homozygous stem cell. Homozygous means that the allele, the colors are same as patient one, right side. That way, patient might think, oh, this homozygous cell might be same as mine. That means the host patient will not able to reject the homozygous stem cell. So by banking homozygous stem cell, we can use, or whole public can use this SCNT for the future. UK, Japan, they simulate that only 150 homozygote iPSCs can cover 93% of UK population. Korea, NIH, simulate that our case, like 130 SCNT lines will cover 92% of whole population. So by banking this homozygous stem cell, whole public can use this for their own medicine in the future. So that's the personalized medicine. By banking, whole public can use that as a CNT. Okay, I have 30 minutes left. I'm going to go over very fast for the prevention and management of aging. So this is the summary slide. As I said, it's important to detect gray zone and management. We have a personalized detection program and the many management program and treatment intervention I just explained to you. And that is 4P medicine: predictive, personalized, participatory, and preventive. For the precision medicine, we've used a lot of prediction service like cancer genomic service, disease prediction, personalized nutrition, etc. And food therapy is important. By assessing lifestyle, nutritional balance, and food allergy specialists identify any nutritional malcondition or excess. And nutritionists, doctors, chefs all together study patient information. They collectively devise a gourmet food plan. And by 8 constitution, nutritionists and doctors also provide personalized medicine. So in that case, Oriental Medicine Clinic create genetic and constitutional profile, which is in Korea, 팔체질, based on the practice of 8 constitution medicine. So in that case, pulmotonia case, specialists provide harmful regimen versus a beneficial regimen. In that case, meat is not good, but fish are good. So based on a constitution and genetic information, we provide personalized food therapy. And then exercise also, MD trainer therapists work together. They check the structure, function of a body and make an individual exercise program. And chiropractic is the same, but chiropractic is adjust body shape and change their brainstem altogether. So it's more complicated therapy. We have various spa program. We call biomedic spa because there is some medical massage. We work together, doctor. And then plastic surgery and dermatologists are important for the beauty. And facial aging is complex, so we have to combine bone, muscle, fat, skin all together. We have programs for taking care of that part. And third example is stem cell extract called Evocell. It's commercially available product. And by checking skin DNA testing, we try to make a personalized skin care. And detox is also important for our body slim. And again, multiple approach we have. By checking metabolism, hormone balancing, and checking 75 genetic markers, we check their body condition and make a plan for the optimize the balance of one's diet. And sleep is also important. NIH recommended adult, we need 7 to 9 hours of sleep, but our daily life is very busy. We don't have enough sleep. That is related to the many chronic disease, so it's important to take care of your sleep needs. And at home, there's sleep capsule. 20 minutes of sleep sleep capsule showed is sufficient and good sleep. And medication is important, so we provide MBCT program. It's good for the insomnia and medication. And one of the longitudinal study recently completed saying that this is very good things. All the people need social context. This report said that least contact people die early, but most contact people live longer. So social context, very important. Okay, so using various approaches, we try to prevent and management of gray zone. That way we can live healthy longer. Thank you.
네, 수고해주신 문지숙 교수님께 다시 한번 뜨거운 박수 부탁드립니다. 네, 이어서 캐나다 나이기드 인터내셔널의 카이 나이가드께서 특별 강연을 이어가시겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kai Naigard with a warm round of applause.
Okay. Clicker, can I take this and walk a little? Okay, just stay in there. Hello, everyone. My name is Kai Bickel Naigard. I'm here representing the Naigard family. And what we are is we're not scientists. We're a family that is interested in longevity and translational application of all of this great work that these gentlemen are talking about, these men and women are talking about, these great scientists. So I'd like to take you through our journey over the last 7 years. And in order to do that, we need to start at the beginning. So let's start. Let's see here. This gentleman right here is my father. And he is a fashion designer, fashion businessman. And if you see in the background there, you see a tree house, which was a vision of his when he was a young man. And I put this slide up there just to say that from a very young age, growing up in this environment, we were taught that anything is possible, that we can achieve anything, that we can think outside the box, that we can do anything. So I did grow up here with my dad, and we did build this house. And I also grew up with my mom in a regular small town in Washington State as well. So I had different backgrounds. Let me just get this thing here. There we go. Okay. What that is right there is an infrared sauna. And the reason that I have that up there is because my mom is actually a stage 4 cancer survivor. And I grew up in that house with her as she battled cancer. And she was the only one to survive in her group, actually. And part of that, we feel, is because she was also doing alternative therapies in addition to her treatment that she was getting. And one of them happened to be the infrared sauna. Now, why was this important for us? Well, as we looked into infrared saunas, it seems as if the infrared heat will help stimulate your body to detox a little better. And I can tell you that when she would get out of the sauna after her chemo and things like that, that sauna smelled horrible. And she also did a few other things like changing her water and a number of other things that we could get into, but only survivor, and this was a big influence on me. And I had 2 families growing up there in Washington. I had my mom, but while she was battling this cancer, which was a couple of years, I also stayed with this family. And that gentleman right there is Billy Frank Jr. He's a Native American icon in the Northwest. He's referred to now as the Martin Luther King Jr. of the Native Americans, recently passed away. And Billy taught me to stand up for what you believe in, as he stood up for his tribal treaty rights and won. And he also taught me the importance of the environment, the ecosystem is very important to our health. We're talking about all of this great technology, but we forget that a healthy environment is a huge factor on our longevity. And this was like my second family growing up in Washington, and Billy's partner, essentially his wife, Sue Crystal, she also came down with cancer while I was in high school, and she lost that battle. She didn't do any alternative therapies, and I watched her wither away from chemo and radiation. It was a very sad moment, and this was a big influence on me because now I was thinking to myself, maybe we don't have it all figured out. Maybe there's still a lot to learn in medicine. So when I got out, I started to think about what I wanted to do. I wasn't really into women's clothing. I was thinking, I was a little bit lost. And the simple enjoyment of something like a McDonald's milkshake was something that I was into. I was eating very poorly, and I had a moment, and in the interest of time, I'm going to go quickly through these slides. I had a moment, actually, where I was drinking one of these shakes, and I wasn't feeling very good. And I said, geez, if only this chocolate milkshake could be good for me. If only it could be good for me. And you know what happened? A few days later, I got invited out to a restaurant with one of the top nutritionalists in the United States, and he handed me one of these as soon as I walked in. Now what that is that was his version of a chocolate milkshake. That was raw, sprouted nut milk, living nut milk essentially, with raw rainforest chocolate, goji berries, cacao nibs, medicinal mushrooms, a number of different things. The whole concept is that we can take the best of the best from all over the world and we can bring it together right now and we can drink it and we don't have to settle. And now I'm drinking milkshakes, I'm drinking nutrition, and this light bulb went off in my head as soon as I drank that wait a minute, wow, what is this world that we still haven't explored yet in the world of health, nutrition, preventative wellness? So what I did was I organized some events at our house to get my dad and my family inspired on this track as well. And I brought in a bunch of different social entrepreneurs and nutritionalists and people like that, and they gave presentations. And this particular slide stood out to me because under certain types of photography, you can see different, obviously, phenomena. And with this, I began to wonder, what's really going on that we can't see out there? Are there energy fields in our food that we don't recognize? What is going on? So many questions came from this. It really sparked off a firestorm in my mind about what we're missing right now in general. So my dad he was getting into it little by little, but this was the catalyst for him. And behind him, actually, that's their old home. My dad's a rags to riches story. And that is him and his sister and my sister. And the woman there in the green in the middle was the catalyst for this whole movement. That is my grandmother, his mother. And when she developed a leaky heart valve and her health began to fade, all of a sudden, when I asked my dad, hey, can we go to this regenerative medicine conference? Can we begin to go and explore these things? He all of a sudden said, you know what, Kai? Yes. I will stop everything and I will go and I will start to explore this in the interest of helping my mother, his mother, my grandmother. And so that's really where my dad began to really gain traction, was to help his mom on this quest for finding new technology that we can use right now to extend our lives. And ultimately what happened was we brought her in for a preventative, or I guess a procedure to fix that leaky heart valve, and something went wrong in that procedure. An artery was struck as they were doing it, internal bleeding, and now all of a sudden we find our grandmother who walked in there, who had a lot of vitality. Now she's stuck in the intensive care unit, and they're telling us, look, she's got less than 10% chance to leave this place, because every day that goes by, your chances go down and down and down. Now, we're not the type of family to just sit back and say, okay, that's cool. We'll just do what we can and pray for her or whatever. That wasn't us. And we went to the hospital and we said, hey, what can we do now? Can we make a case study out of this? Can we go and find other technologies that maybe aren't approved yet? Can we apply that to her in an effort to try to help her? Because we just found stem cell therapies. We'd found a lot of different technologies. And they originally said yes. They said go for it. So we did. And we activated N-Force. We got on our plane and we flew around the world and we discovered and we found things. And we came back to that hospital very excited. And we said, you know what? All we have to do is take some of her blood. We're going to send it off to Israel. They're going to isolate the stem cells. We're going to inject it back in. Very excited. Hospital says, you know what? sorry, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to get a chance to do any of that. And you know, this is actually for everyone here because I feel like I'm speaking to Korea in general. And we talk about legislation, we talk about making a difference. This right here, to me, is something that we could do to make a difference. If you can allow in your legislation for case studies, for people who have low hope, for them to go ahead and try experimental procedures. Maybe they haven't even gotten to a point where there's a human trial yet, but what's your other option? Your other option is just to sit there and let someone die? I mean, we would have gladly signed any waiver, paid any money to go ahead and tried some of these incredible things that we're learning about that may not be ready for people yet. But just allowing the possibility for case studies on people who really need it because they don't have any options, I think would be huge in legislation and would allow for a lot of breakthroughs. So it left us with very little choice. And rather than just letting her die there, we went, and guess where we had to go? We had to go to a third world country. We had to go to this hospital right here. We flew her from a world-class hospital in our world-class plane to a third world country, which looks like that. And you know what? I actually wish we would have gone there sooner, because they actually allowed for us in the Dominican Republic at the time to bring in the stem cell therapist, to bring in the nutrition IV specialist, to bring in all these alternative or integrative disciplinary approaches to work on her. Time, unfortunately, it was too late. We didn't even get to do the stem cells, but we went through the motions and we saw them all working together harmoniously, and we said to ourselves, man, this feels good. Yes. But it was too late. But it was a defining moment for us, because at that time then my dad and I looked at each other and said, you know what, Dad, you're next. And rather than just sit back and wait for something, we took it upon ourselves to go out and find what technologies are still there. You know, we always act in a time of crisis. It propels us to take action. But we didn't want to just be reactive. We don't want to continue to react in a time of crisis. Sure, we made a lot of gains in that month, but we want to keep that pursuit going. So we dedicated 50% of our resources and time, because we're a fashion company, to the pursuit of finding longevity technologies. And that's been my full-time commitment, and my dad has allocated as much time as he can, which is about 50%, of his time. And so where did we go as we started to pursue this? We came to Korea, because when we looked around, we thought to ourselves, what is the best hospital? What is the best anti-aging facility? And guess where we came up with? We took our plane and we flew here. We went to Chaum. We did. And because it's beautiful, and because Dr. Cha and Chaum, they had a reputation when we went there for being on the cutting edge and for doing things that included integrative approaches. And we got exposed to a lot of new ideas, including bioinsurance, where I actually banked my NK cells when I was there. I was 25 years old, and I'm really happy I did it. And this started a little journey for us. Now, my dad learned about something that Cha was working on, and some other scientists too, called somatic cell nuclear transfer, SCNT, and you see sort of this model there. But essentially what it is you would take a cell, an embryonic cell, you would extract the DNA from that cell, you would take one of your cells, you would extract the DNA from that, let's say a skin cell, and you'd put it in that embryonic cell. And if you can get that cell to culture, if you can get it to now begin to create more cells, you could differentiate those cells and have potentially any type of cell matched specifically to you. This was fascinating, and my dad really grabbed a hold of this. He said, you know what, this is something I want to get behind. I don't want to wait around for this. I don't want people to get caught up because they hear the word clone or something like that, a cloned stem cell line. Oh my goodness. You know, he said, I'm going to push this. I'm going to go after this, because everyone knows in the stem cell world that your own cells are always the best. And this could be a huge breakthrough technology that we want to see advanced. For me, I came home and I went to a party, a Vanity Fair party, and I ran into Terrell Owens, who's going to be a Hall of Fame football player. He was just done. And I said, Terrell, have you heard of stem cells? He said, no. I said, listen, I just came back from Korea, and I've learned about stem cells, and let's connect your doctor, Dr. James Andrews, very world-famous sports doctor. Let's connect them to the Cha group, and they did. And they were very excited to go ahead and have Terrell come down and do stem cells, and Terrell did. I made the paper doing that. Great. Maybe that was one of the first stem cell therapies in the NFL. I'm not sure. But it began to start something as well for us, interacting with whether it's CEOs or professional athletes. As we began to make discoveries, we're now seeing them sort of translate. And Terrell got those stem cells, and he ran very fast off of them. And I began to meet Nobel Prize winners, some of them outside-the-box thinkers, and this one in particular was telling me that he believed the body communicated through subtle electromagnetic impulses in the blood, that there's actually signaling going on, a language going on in the blood. Now, whether or not you agree with that, it was still a fascinating conversation for me to hear that. And he sent me actually off to a water conference in Vermont, which is a very obscure conference. And I have to tell you that when I went to this conference, I sat there for 3 days listening. There were 2 other Nobel Prize winners in the audience, and they talked about nothing but water for 3 straight days, if you can believe it. Nothing but water. I watched these guys have arguments. I watched all these slideshows. You know, the one takeaway I knew for certain after this conference was that we still have a lot to learn about water. Water is not just simply H2O. It has a lot more going on in it than just that. Now, I have to show you my dad's video, because while I was doing that, he was doing this.
Since the dawn of time, great men have challenged the status quo and dared to dream.
For every new pioneer, only time can unlock the future. Only history will tell the story.
This is CNN Breaking News.
The University of Oregon made a major announcement on stem cells, one that could lead to breakthroughs in the treatment of Parkinson's, cancer, and many other diseases. For the first time, human skin cells have been transformed into embryonic stem cells. Dr. Shukrat Matalapa of the University of Oregon were successfully able to insert an adult skin cell into an unfertilized human egg, which had been stripped of its existing DNA.
So that way, the stem cells we create, they would be compatible if we transplant these tissues back into patients.
The process, called somatic cell nuclear transfer, or SCNT, is not new, but the results are and are considered to be a quantum leap forward in the reversal of aging and the treatment of disease.
The stem cells came to its own with Dolly the sheep in 1997. Up until now, the problem has been one of rejection. Our body simply rejects all foreign objects put into it, including somebody else's stem cells.
It's been 15 years since we invented embryonic stem cell. No one figured out to use it.
You know, ever since scientists discovered embryonic stem cells, they wanted to be able to tailor-make those cells with the genetic material of the patients they're trying to treat. And this is the technique that would finally be able to accomplish that goal.
From the woman's egg, we took out her DNA, put my old 70-year-old DNA in its place, grew it in vitro, developed embryonic stem cells, age 0. This is huge. This is a game changer. This could eliminate all disease. This perhaps is immortality.
Peter Nygaard, a Finnish-Canadian fashion tycoon and self-made billionaire who parlayed an $8,000 loan into an empire with annual profits in the hundreds of millions.
I want to live forever or die trying.
Bring the action.
One man, younger at heart than those half his age, living a life most could only dream of, yet sharing his collective fortune with our collective human fate. To live forever. A 1,000-year-old quest made by the legendary Ponce de Leon, the Spanish explorer who spent his days searching for the fountain of youth.
Ponce de Leon had the right idea. He was just too early. That was then. This is now.
Preach. If you want something different, beloved, you've got to do something different.
This has always been a 4-step plan. To find the right technology, to find the right country, to write the proper laws, and to get the correct facility.
Human beings in a mind.
Currently, there are 2 leading technologies in stem cell duplication, SCNT and what is called IPS, induced pluripotent stem cells.
But when I asked anybody which would actually be better, IPS or SCNT, well, of course, SCNT, if we could ever get past the religious objections and all the bad PR it's getting.
Last time when it was announced by some Korean researchers, it turned out to be a hoax, right? Or
it was a fraud.
SCNT was dropped altogether. Nobody was interested in it any longer. Nobody except me.
Critics say the stem cells come from destroying embryos, and my newsmaker tonight says that that is simply not true.
The way in which these stem cell lines were derived is from embryos that are created in the process of in vitro fertilization. And in fact, there are hundreds of thousands of these embryos that are simply being discarded.
We throw in the garbage. We shouldn't do that.
And so in 2009, Peter Nygaard creates Nygaard Biotech, employing 4 top scientists from around the world in the field of SCNT, channeling his tremendous energy towards finding the missing link in stem cell technology.
The top scientist in SCNT.
I'll give you my DNA now.
And one of them was Russian. And of course the Russian was discovered it.
I'm very glad in any event that you stayed on it, that you made this huge discovery.
Well, this is a very well-respected, well-known team of scientists out at Oregon Health and Science University.
The technology is real, so it works. It's done deal.
I may be the only person in the world who has my own embryonic stem cells growing in a petri dish. Can you imagine that? In the petri dish, that is me before I was born. Science fiction? Scientific fact.
When we die, the money we can't keep, but we probably spend it all because the pain ain't cheap.
With the Western world still embroiled in political debate over embryonic stem cells, Peter set out to find a suitable host country.
We traveled everywhere in the world now for the last 2 years, just looking.
In Shenzhen, Peter forges a partnership with BGI, the world leader in genome sequencing, technology that eliminates all guesswork in medical diagnosis. Combined with SCNT, he would possess both the technology to target future health risks and correct them before they ever happen. But owning the right technology would mean nothing without a country to embrace its use.
All right, I got to stop it there in the interest of time as I'm running out of it. But you can see that we've made a huge effort, and in particular on his side, he's looking at SCNT as one of the keys. So, looking forward, I began to explore some of the other great thinkers as we continue down this road. And what Einstein was interesting when you start looking at him about health. They said, someone asked Einstein how it felt to be the smartest man alive. Einstein said, I don't know, you'll have to ask Nikola Tesla. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have looked into what Tesla has done, but he's a fascinating person that we ought to spend more time researching. And when you look at Tesla, he says, the day science begins to study the non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. And Tesla being a physicist, maybe we ought to start thinking about what the physicists have to say about biology. And when he says non-physical phenomena, what does he mean? He means the invisible field. We have all this information coming into our cell phones, for example, that we don't see, but we know it's there. And that's a very interesting area for us, and one that we began to continue to explore. So I went to this conference in Germany. Germany has a lot of these great thinkers there. This particular one is focused on resonance, photons, the electromagnetic field, vibration, sound, how it interfaces with the human body. And it was very, very interesting as we went down this. Actually found some practitioners that are actively using conductivity and resonance and having great success. And they're now calling themselves resopaths. And so I also started to look into what Dr. Emoto had to do. Now, Emoto's a little bit controversial. Some people say his science didn't check out, whatnot. Well, we spent time with his apprentice who went in there as someone who was a skeptic and left someone who's a true believer. And Emoto's very interesting because, again, we get back to water and disharmonic frequencies and their effect on water. It turns out that water is very reactive. It's reactive to the way that you can play music to it, for example, and you're going to get different crystals that are going to form it, different patterns that are going to form it. This all goes into that invisible field. What are we doing? And since we're so much about water, we are water, this is a very interesting topic. Now, back to water, H2O. there was another technology that we found. I know I'm out of time, so I'm going to just briefly go through this. There was another technology we found in Europe that was having great effects for cancer and for a number of other conditions. And what they think they've done is create a very stable liquid oxygen, essentially. They feel that they can take the hydrogen and stimulate the water so that the hydrogen begins to gas off, leaving these small oxygen molecules to go and attach to other water molecules, and that when you drink it, and you can measure this, by the way, but when you drink it, now these little extra oxygens are in your body, and you can measure even on your skin the oxygen rising in your cells. Now, in terms of proof, it was interesting because I gave this to some professional athletes, and this was a professional athlete that came over to this Resopath, who this guy right now is getting tested through conductivity by the Resopath, who's accessing a point on his foot and finding what's working with him. And he's got a photon light going on his elbow, his pitching elbow there. But when we gave him the water, it was very interesting because we gave him this water, and next thing I know, him and the rest of the superstars on the team are now drinking this water because he texts me, he says, Kai, I don't know what you did, but this water, when I drink it, I'm throwing it 3 miles an hour faster. I hit 92 miles an hour on the radar gun when I drink it, and I hit 89 when I don't. So they put this on Instagram. It says, Kai, thanks for hooking me and my teammates up with some of this water. This stuff is amazing. Helped me finish strong and throwing harder than I did all year. And it's just interesting as we explore this, as we continue to explore science, that we're finding breakthroughs, that we're finding products that are actually working when we give them to some of these folks in professional sports or executive health. Now, Dr. Cha and the Cha group have been strong allies of mine. I have a ton of respect for Dr. Cha, and I'm always going to stand with him. He's a great man. And he went out, and I told him about this. I tell him about a lot of these things that we discover along. And what he did, he said, Kai, this sounds interesting. Let's explore it. So he brought a bunch of scientists with him, and we went around Europe at Medicine Week. We explored a lot of these technologies. He went and explored these baths, and we found ways to get some of this technology to Cha and the Cha group to begin to study. And I want to quickly show you this little reenactment here on vibration. I don't know if we can get this to play right now, but I want to show you how vibration seems to work with the body. And I'm also going to mention this. Have you guys ever heard of the Schumann field? I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Schumann wave before, but they've measured actually the Earth, that there's this electromagnetic impulse coming from the Earth called Schumann, 7.83 hertz. And there's been a lot of really positive health effects with people who have studied that. And actually, that's part of the whole reason for grounding technology. And it's funny, the more advanced we get, the more that we find that we need to come back to the Earth. And we need to come back to the natural way of things, and there are tons of benefits there. This little clip right here is just simply to show you that when you put different harmonics on this tone generator, when you stimulate it with different frequencies and different hertz, that actually this does translate to the physical world. So you're seeing that 345 hertz, look what that form is, what's happening there. And we have so much that we haven't explored yet. We all know that there's still so much to learn, that we have to stay open-minded. We have to keep and embrace integrative disciplines. We want everyone at the table. We want no idea to be off the table, because this is the most complicated question that we have in the world, is how to advance the human body and work with it. So you get the idea, and I'm almost done here. Last slide. That's Panama, and the only reason I put that up there is because now we find ourselves going to Panama for stem cells. Why? Because of the legislation. And it really comes down to legislation. Legislation on whether or not you embrace aging as a disease. Legislation on whether or not you allow for case studies, for example, if people are in a bleak or dire situation, do you allow for that family to maybe pay extra and do a case study to see if we can take some of these experimental procedures and see if they'll work? And that's the key. So I ask all of you here to really consider what everyone has to say about legislation, because if your legislation changes, you will attract the best entrepreneurs, you'll attract the best scientists, and you will attract the best customers who will all come to Korea and who will recognize Korea as the global leader in longevity science. 감사합니다.
네, 여러분 다시 한번 뜨거운 박수 부탁드립니다. 네, 이상으로 첫 번째 세션을 마치겠습니다. 여러분 수고해주신 좌장 졸튼 이스트방과 모든 패널분들께 다시 한번 뜨거운 박수 부탁드립니다. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. 네, 잠시 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 지금부터 점심 식사가 진행될 예정입니다. 여러분은 식사를 맛있게 하시고요. 오후 2시에 다시 이곳 행사장에서 저희는 찾아뵙도록 하겠습니다. 지금부터 점심 식사가 진행됩니다. 식사를 맛있게 하시고 오후 2시에 다시 이곳 행사장에서 오후 세션으로 찾아뵙도록 하겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a lunch break, and after the luncheon, we will continue with the afternoon session of the 4th Global Leaders Forum. We hope you enjoy your luncheon, and we will see you back here at 2 p.m. Thank you very much.